this meeting to order for the Legal and Legislative Committee of Vallecitos Water District on Monday, October 30th, 2017. I don't know if there's no speakers, so I won't read the public comment. We'll keep carry on. And General Manager Prum, do you want to kick us off with like just some background? And then,
yeah, I could do that.
Okay.
Yeah, so we sent out a request for proposal initially to 9 firms, and then one firm contacted me later and asked if they could be added, so we sent it to them. So 10 firms received the RFP. The deadline for the proposals, for any interested firms, was last Friday, October 27th. And by the end of the business day, we received 5 proposals.
That's it?
Yeah, 5 out of the 10 firms. I have copies to leave you all with, but so the firms that submitted were Procopio, Scott and Jackson, which is Jeff's firm, BB&K, a firm called AALR&R, and Nossaman. Those are the 5 firms. So I can give you a copy of those.
Did
Give you a copy of these, and here's the, if you can give that to Director Sinello, that's the original proposal that went with it.
Okay. Did the firms that did not submit a bid, did any of them reach out to explain why they didn't, or did they just not?
You know, we haven't had time to really do any follow-up, so it was 5 o'clock on Friday was the deadline, so
Okay.
we haven't had too much chance. I did have one firm that I thought was going to propose. It's a firm called Rutan and Tucker. I don't know if you're familiar with Rutan and Tucker. I had spoken with the person who would have been their designated general counsel. His name is Jeremy Youngrice. Spoken with them on 3 occasions. Very early on, kind of midway through the process, and as early as last Thursday, he contacted me, just checking a few finer points. I was very surprised that they didn't submit by the deadline. He was the only one that I'd had kind of regular communication with. So I sent Jeremy an email this afternoon asking him, clarifying that he did not mean to propose, and try to find out why.
And he hasn't responded?
He hasn't responded yet. I just sent it a little while ago.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Is all of this, if I may, is all of this public information?
I believe so. I don't believe there's anything. I would check with Jeff before I say let's release this information. But
No, I don't want to release it. My concern is that it is released to all the agencies that are involved, and that would probably be, I don't know, they probably know they're all pretty close anyhow.
All the law firms, you mean?
all the other
Yeah.
firms. Yeah.
All law firms, or our own, Jeff Scott.
Yeah.
Is he privy to it as of now?
No, Jeff has not seen any of these, nor do I intend to share them with him throughout the process. So, if there's any point in time that we feel we can divulge the information after the process is completed, then I'll look to Jeff or whoever our counsel is at that point in time to do so.
Now, you only got five
Proposals.
proposals. Have you had a chance to look them over at all?
I looked at one over the weekend just to get a feel for it, and I looked at Jeff's because I know Jeff and I know how he
That's the
operates,
standard.
so I was trying to look at and see how his proposal was. So, and depending on how our conversation goes here, my intent is certainly to go through all of these. So one of the things I wanted to talk with the committee here is how structured do we want to go? Is there an intent to come up with really rigorous criteria, point values, weighting systems, or do we want to go more of a holistic, bigger picture feel? And maybe I should have asked the second question first is, do we need to do much preliminary screening? Because the intent of the committee was to try to narrow the scope down. We didn't know how many firms we would get, and I felt like 10 would be too big to take forward through an interview process. I was probably more comfortable with 3 to 4 taking the interview, but we're only at 5. So one option is to say everyone goes through, and everyone's going to get in front of the board. The other option is to go through a process of selection or downsizing, and then we'd have to figure out the process by which we would want to do that.
I'd like to, before we make that decision on your second question, the first question about the structure, I know this is all brand new. We just got this on Friday night. We just got it today. I'd like to take it home and do similarly what we did with the GM selection, where we took all the resumes and we had a chance to go through them. I don't mind if it's me, or I'll probably make my own sort of kind of spreadsheet of some basic information, hourly rates, overall costs, any kind of retainers, if that comes into effect, whatever the potential spend is, who the representative is it somebody that I already know, is it somebody I don't know, those types of things, kind of my own notes. But from staff's perspective, if you guys have a template, or if you can develop something that kind of will outline that for the whole board, would probably be a good starting point, just so we have a one pager of kind of comparisons with the 5, and
Okay.
just like an overview of capturing all this, for starters. And then based off of that, there might be there may, again, this is all hypothetical, there might be some things in these proposals that just kind of rule somebody out right away. For example, if one of them is 10 times more than everybody else, we may not even want to waste our time.
Right.
So I think that would probably be a good starting point.
Okay.
Any thoughts on that, Director Martin?
Yeah, I'm disappointed there's only 5, but that being what it is, that's what it is.
How long was the RFP out for?
About a month. It was a long time. When I initially did it, I said that's probably too much time, but I wanted to make sure nobody complained that there wasn't enough time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to have some time to go over and look at these, and put some questions and answers together. Along the lines of exactly what Mike was explaining. Well, this is an employee. When we actually interview, we have to interview in an open public format.
I don't know. That's a good question. I'll have to check with Jeff. I don't believe so.
I don't think so because it's an employee, but I'd like to have at least us review all 5 before we recommend whatever it is we want to do to the board.
Mm-hmm.
At least have an initial.
Did you say interview or just review?
I'd like to review and then potentially, depending on the questions that may come out, maybe interview all 5 as a pre-interview.
Or
Oh, is
submit.
it? Okay.
You either interview or maybe even just submit questions to all the bidders.
Right.
Yeah.
The same questions as to everybody, and then
Yeah.
review the answers maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something
Yeah.
like that.
If after reviewing all 5, you have this maybe nagging couple of questions and you think would
Yeah.
differentiate, we could say, hey, please answer the following clarifying questions.
And that would be, I think as Mike said, that would be more to rule them out rather than to say, oh, we like you too,
Yeah.
we like you too.
So I said I only reviewed one. I only reviewed one in detail. The others I kind of thumbed through. And I think you're going to find that it's one of those good problems to have, is you have some very good firms, a lot of great experience. You're not going to find some guy that's working out of his garage that's never done business for a water agency. That just kind of decided on a lark to throw in a proposal. So it's a good quality problem to have. It's going to make our job more difficult, but it's a good problem to have.
So, just a question. I've heard of Best, and I've heard of Nossaman, and I've heard obviously of Scott's firm, but these other two, this Atkinson, this AARR, and this Procopia.
Procopio.
Have you ever?
Yeah, Procopio's
heard of
a
them,
huge
or?
name. I mean, Procopio's
Okay.
right up there with Best and Krieger, so they're kind of
Okay.
in that rarefied air. But so the other firm, the Atkinson, Andelson, Loya, Rude, and Romo, never heard of them. I believe this is the firm that added. Do you remember, Ann? Excuse me.
I got my list here.
If they were added,
It's AALRR, Atkinson, Andelson.
I think that was the last one.
Yeah, so this is the firm that wasn't originally sent a proposal. How I originally came up with the 9 is I talked to fellow general managers, I looked at their websites, found out who they were using, talked to some other attorneys, and came up with this list of 9, and this firm wasn't on there. About a week or so maybe it was 2 weeks into the process, they contacted me. I don't know how they got my name, and said, hey, would it be too late? And I said, well, give me some information, let me vet your firm. And I got on their website, made a couple of calls, and said, yeah, it seems like they've got the basic background knowledge. So I gave them the go-ahead, and I had either Diane or Ann sent them a proposal, which was kind of the invitation to submit a proposal.
Mm-hmm.
well, Nossaman, isn't Nossaman the attorney for
Olivia.
Olivia.
Lebanon?
Yeah.
So they do have a local office.
So that's another question, and you
That's
know,
what my big question on these guys from Cerritos.
well, you know, you look at a lot of them. So if you look at the front cover, like Procopio, their main office is in San Diego, Jefferson, North San Diego, BBK, downtown San Diego, but Nassaman, they show their Figueroa Street in downtown Los Angeles.
Right.
So one of the questions I had, if we wanted to develop
Yeah.
criteria, kind of is in that, I put it under the category of ability to respond. Are they close by? Or are they going to be charging us a fortune just to drive here? So even a
Right.
1 hour meeting is 4 hours of billing time, those types of things. So I don't know if they have a local office or if maybe just the general counsel for Nassaman that services Olivenhain, his name is Alfred. I don't know where Alfred starts and ends his day when he's working for OWD.
Right.
But that's certainly a facet.
I think you have the questions that we're gonna probably ask.
Yeah, so I can, if it would be helpful for the two of you, maybe when the meeting's done, I can spend some time, put something together and send it out to you as a starting point to get your brain thinking, and you can maybe delete a few, add a few, tell me which ones you like. And whether we go forward and develop rigorous points, like saying cost is worth 10%,
Yeah.
or I don't know if you want to get to that level of detail or not.
Personally, I think that's more difficult. I think, I know Mike from my dealings with him, and I think I know you pretty well over the last 6 months. I think we have a pretty good feel for people.
Yeah. Well, and that's a huge thing.
Yeah, a
That's
lot
that
of it's
feel.
gonna be the personality.
Yeah, and I don't know if this committee wants to try to get that personality or leave that to the full board to try to develop, get a feel for their personality.
Well, I agree. I mean, eventually it's gotta go to the full board to make the decision, but
Right.
initially, we could probably weed out some people that common people won't deal with. I
Yeah.
mean, not that they're gonna send someone like that to us, but they probably will. I mean,
Yeah.
they know they're looking for a job, so they're gonna send their 18, but you wanna make sure that's who you end up with.
Yeah, well, we'd have to,
Specify.
yeah, we're gonna have to, specify.
Specify who.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
so if
Yeah.
we do an interview, either an interview at this level and then later on an interview with the full board, or just interviews with the full board, whoever they are presenting both in their proposal and at the interview stage as the person who's going to be our legal representative,
That's who we expect
we,
to see.
yeah, we don't need, we can't have the switcheroo at the end. And
I made that. I tried to make that really clear in the RFP that went out. That says of primary importance is the person who will be designated as general counsel.
Right.
So in their proposals, they all designate their general counsel. We'll go with the Nassaman, for example. So they're a good firm. They represent Olivenhain. I know they're not well, but I know their attorney, Alfred. Alfred is not available because Olivenhain meetings and our meetings conflict. So they would have to designate somebody else as the general counsel. So
Right.
you may be thinking, hey, great firm, Olivenhain's really happy, but we don't get Alfred. So that who you get is, to me, the single most important
I agree.
factor in this whole
I
thing.
agree. I agree who it is and how well you get along with them as well. I mean,
Yeah.
if there's someone you just don't get along with, it's
Right.
like,
yeah,
So
you gotta have a comfort
That's the
level.
first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna call these, call anybody from these 5 firms, if they represent local agencies, I'm gonna call those local agencies and talk to them about, first of all, who's the person, and are they familiar with somebody else that may be in that firm? Like I'd call Kim and say, hey, we can't get Alfred, but they mentioned Bill Pelham, he's a good guy.
do you know Bill?
She may
Yeah.
or may not know him, so.
Right.
But yeah, and Director Snell, I think you mentioned it, some of these things are just to weed groups out, not necessarily to include them or rank them, it's just to
Right.
say, I can't work with them, or they're way too expensive, or whatever criteria.
Well, the whole idea, I think, of committees is to not have to take up the entire board's time doing it.
Right.
Where the two of us
We can do a little bit of
can
the
weed out,
legwork.
with your help,
Yep.
can weed out who should go to the board, who shouldn't.
Right.
So it saves the board a whole lot of time. Do we have a timing on this, Mr. Chairman? When would you like to?
Well, I think that for starters, we need to take at least a week for us to go through these.
Yeah.
And develop kind of our own, set of notes, and then we could reconvene sometime in November with our notes combined with, if Gwen could take a stab at maybe putting together like a comparison spread
Yeah.
of, who the representative is, and the other thing I like to capture not just price, but what and I know they're in there. So at least the first couple I just flipped through about who else they service locally, where their local office
Right.
is. That all the stuff we've been talking about already. But if we can capture that on, like a one-page spreadsheet, which shouldn't be too difficult to do.
Okay. A lot of it, and I won't call it fluff, but they go in how they would serve the district. Okay, that's hard to filter through that, but more of that specific concrete stuff. They're housed here, they serve this company,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I mean, I looked at one just briefly too, and it already had options of like you could go with like $15,000 flat rate a month, or there was $395 an hour.
Yep.
So whatever those
Right.
spend options are.
Yeah, that's apples and pears because.
Yeah. Well.
We don't know how many hours it takes somebody to do something.
It's really difficult. Yeah.
Now Jeff bills us by the hour, is that correct?
Right. So if you all have a copy of the RFP that was sent out, if you go to the last page, I didn't put in a lot of structured timelines, but the heading is evaluation and
Okay.
selection process. The very first sentence gave the deadline for the proposal, so that was last Friday. And if you go to the very bottom of that page, it talks about, we're trying to get a contract approved at December 20th, and we're shooting for the first of the year for a new firm to be on board. The last sentence, though, they're just the best schedule estimates that
Yeah.
are subject to change, but in terms of timing, this group, this committee will need to probably within a couple of weeks, I would say, probably make a recommendation for how to move forward, and then figure out a date to go to the board.
And the last week of November, we're all gone.
Yeah.
So it really leaves December.
Yeah, well, see,
Well.
so we have meetings on the 1st and the 15th of November, and then the 6th of December. The 20th was probably gonna be canceled, kind of per the district protocol, but if we needed to call a special meeting just for
I
the
was gonna say,
purposes
we can
of,
have special meetings,
Yeah.
especially for this, because I think it'd be done closed session.
yeah,
You'll have to check, but, because it might take at least one, maybe two, in December, only because of, people's schedules and the attorney schedules.
yeah, I mean, the reality is, you're gonna have to spend at least an hour with these firms, and let's say we took all 5 for whatever reason,
Right.
that's a full day.
Yeah.
Interview 5 firms, give yourselves time to
Right.
talk about what you heard,
Or 2 half days,
or 2 half
because
days, yeah.
some attorneys can't make it this day, or some
Right.
of our board members can't make it this day.
And obviously, getting closer and closer to the holidays, it's harder to get
So the
right
beginning of
people.
December is better.
Yes, but that's
So-
only a month
So
away.
what I'm thinking that we should reconvene next week. That gives us time to review this, put some notes together, and then based off of what we learn when we review these, we can determine at that next meeting if we want to how we want to proceed. If we want to bring some folks in, do we want to come up with some questions to send out to all of the bidders, and so forth before we decide when we're going to actually bring this to the whole board. So I would say, calendar. And then I guess just to clarify, the Rutan firm that you're talking
Rutan and
about, like,
Tucker?
so if he does respond to you, are we going to accept it?
My recommendation would be no, unless there's extenuating circumstances. I dropped it in the mailbox and it blew up, something like that. It's not just, oh yeah, I forgot, I'll be in
Right.
tomorrow. That's a bad sign if he's
Yeah.
gonna be your attorney, so.
That's a bad start.
Yeah.
I'll let you know, when I hear back from Jeremy, I'll let you know if he consciously decided not to do it, or if something extenuating
And
circumstances.
Peak Altoona,
That's the
we sent out to them.
San Marcos's firm.
Oh,
Yeah.
We never heard back,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, that's another thing. If the committee would like me to try to reach out to all the firms that did not submit and just find out why, or not, or don't you?
I mean,
don't
the
you care?
only reason why I would maybe kind of care is if there was something that, it doesn't. I mean, I can't even think of an example. But if there was something that could have been done differently on our part, or if there was some sort of red flag. But I mean, looking at the RFP and the timeline, I can't even imagine what that might be. So,
Maybe it's
Yeah.
just not their forte.
Well, so the other thing, so I spoke with, I mentioned I spoke with Jeremy 3 times. I spoke with
It's weird for
representatives.
so I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's weird for somebody to proactively reach out to you and engage you in those conversations on 3 different occasions,
Yeah,
and then not bid.
I know.
So that seems weird to me.
Of the 5 that didn't submit, he's the only one that I'm curious to find out what happened. Based on my conversations with Jeremy and 2 other attorneys from the firms, and I can't remember if they were from firms that did or didn't submit, there was some concern about whether we were just going through a process. Okay, you've had a guy for 30 years, 20 or 30 years, now you're doing this. Is it a done deal and it's just, you're just checking a box?
Understandable?
And those were,
Understandable.
those were their words. There's questions.
Yeah.
You guys just checking a box here. And I said, no, we're really, we're going through the process and it's legitimate. We're putting a committee together and we're going to be evaluating. But sometimes they just say, the chance of getting it is so small, we're not going to, because it's a lot of time and money for
I
them.
just spin their wheels.
Yeah,
And
we
that's,
could-
that's legitimate. I mean,
It is.
you had the same guy for 30 years.
right.
Yeah. But
So, but having said that, even if we had more recent changeover, it doesn't mean those other 5 would have submitted. They would
Right.
have said, no, we've got other, we're busy
Well,
enough.
and some of them now, for instance, I don't know that much about Altoona Peak and Ferguson. Ferguson. What the hell is his name? Anyhow,
Oh, no,
I don't know that much about them, but I don't know if they have any water in their repertoire.
Yeah,
So they might not, well, that might not be their thing.
right.
We didn't necessarily just send to water people, we sent to,
We sent to people that had experience in water.
oh, in water, okay,
Yeah.
so Peak has, okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah, we didn't want somebody who's just like I've been a city attorney for a number of years and never
Right.
dealt with water, because that's a very little use to us.
interesting.
Okay, so I'll put something together, like a comparison sheet, I think is what Director Sinella called it, and try to give some critical things like their location, list of their clients, maybe their hourly rate. Hourly rate's a little complicated because sometimes they'll have a list of 8 people, their lead counsel, paralegals. I'll take what I think is, obviously, the person they designate as general counsel, I'll put their rate on there, that's the most important.
Right.
How often they use a paralegal, I don't know, but I could put that in there.
Yeah. And I
Also,
don't.
where their offices is important.
Yeah,
Yeah,
The guys in Cerritos,
yeah.
that doesn't work.
And the other thing and I don't know how you quantify this, but something I'm curious to learn through this process is that, and I think Jeff and his firm do a great job for us, but they're a small firm. And some of these firms that have bid are large firms, and I don't know how you quantify it. I'm hoping that I'll learn about all the capabilities as I go through these, but some of these larger firms, do they have more in-house capabilities
Yeah, I put it,
that we don't currently have access to?
I put a question in there to address that directly, and I don't remember where it is. But basically what I said is, kind of, if you're a small firm, tell us how you're gonna give us legal advice on a broader topic area. So in their proposals, and I'll try to find that section in the RFP and highlight it for you, you may wanna look at that section of the proposal, because they may say, hey, we have long-standing relationships with these other firms. They do our environmental work and our construction contract dispute law. And it's kind of ready to go. We just make a phone call and they're on board, as opposed to now they got to go form a partnership and develop a contract. And you'll find that the bigger firms, they say we have it all in house. We're BB&K. We don't go outside for
Right,
anything.
right,
But
they have it all.
then look at BB&K's prices too. So it's
They reflect that.
they do. It's fabulous reputation, great firm, but you pay for it.
Right. And you were gonna look up for me, I had a question as to
The costs.
how much we've been charged for Lake San Marcos
Yeah.
by our current fund.
Yeah, I'm doing 2 things. So, well, actually 3. So one specific to Lake San Marcos, how much have we spent on that? Another is just litigation in general, and then the third piece is what do we charge just for kind of running the district, the non-litigation type of stuff, just
Right.
attending board meetings, giving us legal advice, reviewing contracts and agreements, that type of thing. So, don't have it yet, but it's in the middle.
And that reviewing contracts thing, I hate to keep bringing this up, but for the last time I will. That's not true.
You know yourself too well.
Yeah. When I asked him that night about a hold harmless clause, and he was, oh, we don't do that. Now, James told me in confidence after, yeah, we usually do have that.
Yeah, we do. And Hal, I would recommend that you ask, if Jeff makes that final list to interview, ask him that question, because he needs to give you an answer that you're comfortable with.
Because he never gave me one that night that I was comfortable with. It's like, we don't do it because they won't accept the contract. Well, then they don't build it.
Yeah, you know, in my experience, sometimes people think they heard a different question than you may have asked, so there may have been a disconnect, but it's a great question, and the answer needs to get us comfortable that, oh yeah, he's gonna look out for our legal interest when it comes to a contract.
Yeah, I always think, yeah.
Yeah. You weren't wowed by the answer.
I wasn't even, I was taken back by the answer going,
Yeah.
gee, it's been a fortune off of us. With all the lawsuits you have to fight that are third parties. So, but yeah, I will ask.
Yeah, I'm not aware of one example since I've been here at least, and in the contracts I've reviewed, where we didn't have proper language protecting us. Doesn't mean it's not out there, I just haven't come
Right.
across it yet.
But we didn't have it in the Newland contract.
I'm not sure which contract you mean there, but,
Well, whatever it was that we gave Newland didn't have that in it at the
Yeah.
time, and should have.
right.
So it's like, that should be boilerplate every contract.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, talk that to death. Almost.
You know, in general, there are gonna be cases where you're gonna be entering an agreement with another party that won't agree to your terms, your language.
Sure.
But in general, you should have that. That's,
Well, I
here's our
think-
boilerplate.
I think it's a boilerplate, it's there, and if you don't wanna do it, well, then it's a question to go to a policymaker,
Right.
not to the
Yeah.
legal counsel. It's a policymaker. Hey, this guy doesn't want this part of the contract that we protect you with.
Yep.
Do you still wanna
Be
sign
okay
it?
with that? Yeah.
And it's like, no.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think most of the folks that I just asked through this AALRR, I didn't see anybody that was local. So.
Yeah, and so that's one of those things that if you had rigorous criteria in weighting, how much would you weight local? It's a hard thing to say, but it's important.
Yeah, but with just the reality of it is you can't have your legal counsel driving down twice a month from Los Angeles or
No.
Be
no,
quite
I
a
mean,
cost,
just
quite a cost.
yeah. Well, unless they're doing it on their own dime, and I just
That doesn't happen.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
and even then, I mean,
They're going to get it out of you somewhere.
Yeah.
You know.
and then but I also look at it just from a fatigue standpoint. You have somebody just sat in traffic for 2.5, 3 hours to come to our meeting. Sometimes our meetings go to 7 or 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
They still got to drive back 2 to 3 hours to go
Their
home.
mind be maybe on the
Yeah.
road instead of at the
Yeah,
meeting.
just that's.
Well,
But we've had meetings where we've had attorneys there, and it seems to me like they've worked 12 hours already that day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. That's
just
it.
to share with you, I'm not advocating this, but the Encino Wastewater Authority recently went out for SCADA services. You probably heard that Jim giving it an update. The way they selected the consultant, they interviewed them at the consultant's offices. They went there to make sure that the people were equipped to handle that.
Mhm.
I'm not proposing that because I don't want to get in a train to go up to LA to interview somebody, but if they're all local,
Yep.
you know, but you'll find out when I develop that comparison chart, you'll see.
I
all
think
that
something
area.
within San Diego County is going to be a pretty much a deal breaker. You know, if they're outside of San Diego County, it's going to be a deal breaker.
Yeah.
Probably for me.
Unless they're very, very south Orange County.
Yeah.
You know, if they're in
Irvine maybe, but
They have to have
or
more
San
than
Clemente, I don't
Yeah.
even know where those
Yeah.
are.
more than an 858 number.
Yeah.
Okay.
interesting.
Well, at least we have 5. That's exciting.
Yeah, and that's good. And like I said, there's good firms. I mean, we have, and I can't speak to this. I don't know these people at all, but the other 4 I'm aware of to varying degrees. So
Who did Encinitas use when you were there?
they have inside
Internal?
attorney. Well, he's a contract, but it's kind of like this. He's been there
Forever.
25 years. So his
I'm
name's
surprised
Glenn
much that
Saban.
council's changed. They haven't changed
Yeah.
attorneys.
Yeah, he's ridden the wave. And Carlsbad has 5 full-time staff attorneys. You couldn't get anything done at that city. There was only 4 when I was there. They've added 1 since I left, but that's a lot.
That's amazing.
I mean, it's a city. It's got more going on, but
Oh, it's got a lot going on. Yeah.
but 5, yeah. Yeah, it was hard to get anything through the legal
They
department.
get the
there.
taxes
Yeah,
to support
That,
them.
yeah, that city's booming.
we got a good economic engine going
We'll
there.
be doing that well just after the next earthquake. We'll have oceanfront property.
When they fall into the ocean.
Yeah, we'll have oceanfront property.
So Director Sinella, it sounded like you were proposing to meet in a week.
Yeah, I think a week
Okay.
should be good enough time for us to read through these. Would
Sure.
you need more time, Director Martin, or
Oh, we
I think
should
I
do
could
it.
probably cram through it in a week.
Yeah, as long as I have the weekend.
So what would we hope to accomplish? I'm not pushing back, I think it's a good idea.
See if we can rule out
Okay.
for sure.
We're trying to come up with a final number and a final list.
Yeah, so I think the initial things that we're going to accomplish are like the agenda for the next meeting would look something along the lines of we huddle up after we all had a chance to look at this in depth because none of us really have. Is there any glaring questions that we have that maybe you can help answer with your experience, or maybe all three of us have some questions that we wanted to draft the questions to them. And then from there, based off of what we find and what we learn, that'll help us, I think, determine what our next steps will be after that. As to if it's pretty cut and dry, and then all five are all things are looking pretty equal, then perhaps we just decide to go straight to the board.
Yep.
Maybe we say, well, one of these don't have an office south of Los Angeles. Do we want to just rule them out at that point?
Right.
Those types of things. So.
And if we narrow it down to 3, just go to the board.
Yeah, and if
That's
we,
always
and if we,
just
yeah,
go
if
to
we're
work.
down to 3 at that
Right.
point.
Assuming we can come up with a date that works for them in December.
Yeah, that'll become the more problematic thing.
I'm open just about all the time.
Just all the time. That helps, thank you.
Man,
I'm here for you.
Yeah.
I'm
And
a
so-
public servant. I'm
You
here
are.
to serve.
Yeah. the people's
problem
work.
solver.
Here to serve.
And maybe at the next meeting, we can start talking about calendars. Whether we come down with
Yeah.
a final number or not, we can at least maybe start picking a week. What week do we think we
There we
should
go.
start interviewing? And then I can
I'm
start
thinking
working with the
first
rest of
week
the
in
board.
December. That way it gives us plenty
Yeah.
of time to have a decision by the 20th.
Yep,
Because we have our meeting on the 6th.
6th, yeah.
So if we meet, yeah. Yeah, well, you know, if they really want the job, they'll show up on the 6th. If we determine that works.
Yeah,
They really want it.
yeah, we'll
They
see.
don't
This
want it.
is, unless they have a specific, I'm in court that day, okay, we can be a little bit flexible, but
Put your traffic fines on time.
maybe he's on the other side of the
Oh,
court.
yeah.
So next
And
week,
that's not good either. If they're in court too much,
Yeah,
it's like,
that's-
no, you're in court way too much for
You're
us.
too litigious, yeah.
the only day I cannot meet at 4 o'clock next week would be Thursday the 9th. Everything else I'm open. Or a 4 p.m.er.
Take a look at my calendar right now. Next week. I can't do Monday, but I can do Tuesday.
You
One
were
week.
talking Thursday, right?
Yeah. So
You can't do
I
Thursday.
cannot do
Oh,
Thursday.
you cannot do
You cannot
Thursday.
do-
Oh,
Yeah, that's the only day I cannot
oh,
do.
okay.
Yeah.
So
Tuesday,
so
does
one
Tuesday
one
work
week
for
from
you?
What date is Tuesday?
That's the 7th,
The 7th of
November.
Pearl Harbor Day, guys.
election day.
Pearl Harbor Day.
Election day, too.
That's not, is it?
November 7th.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean that doesn't mean we can't have a meeting.
We'll have a moment of silence
Okay, as long as we have a moment of silence.
before the meeting.
That's we're gonna ask for time and a half per diem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works. November 7th.
Okay, November 7th
4 p.m.
at 4
here.
p.m.
We'll come with our books, mine.
Yeah.
and-
Jot down some notes, what you like, what
Yeah.
you don't like.
Yeah,
Any questions that maybe
Yeah.
we hash out between ourselves, and then anything else would go to them.
yeah. I think the good thing is even if we, for whatever reason, we can't exclude anybody, it's not an unmanageable number, even if
Right.
the full slate went
Yeah.
to the board. So,
Right.
whereas
Sure.
at 10, it would have been too big.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree.
but if it's possible to narrow it down for the board, that's the reason we're here.
Yeah.
Is to make it an easier.
Yeah, I mean when we, and I don't regret turning it over to the legal committee to do so. I still think this is going to be a really good process and the best way to do it. But I think we all would agree that when we originally talked about doing this, anticipated getting at least 7 or 8.
Yeah.
That we would probably weed out 3 or 4 of them
Yep.
before we even got to the next level. So
That's kind of what I was anticipating. So. Well, the reality is, we kind of, at a staff level, mostly myself, just did some preliminary weeding out by not allowing people to proposed that weren't legitimate contenders.
Right.
Because that takes a lot of time to read something and say that was a waste of time. And I don't think we have anything like that in here.
Yeah.
All-
Yeah, they all took their time to put together a decent proposal,
Yeah.
it looks like, so.
What departments currently have to have the most interaction with Jeff and our legal services currently?
So general manager's office, engineering does a lot, because engineering does our construction contracts as well as our development agreements
Mhm.
with working with development communities. Human resources, so Rondi's group does quite a bit. That's about it. So Ed's group, not too much. Occasionally Ed will have a contract and he'll interface, but he's not a big player in that world.
Mhm.
But if I was to add somebody to the team from the staff perspective, it would probably be James. Would be the
Yeah.
one I'd want the most.
Yeah, in hearing what you're saying, I'd even be comfortable with, at least just from if we do obviously if we have a full board interviews, they'll be there because I don't know if it's public or not public, but I think Rondi and James should be part of that just so they can hear and
Yeah.
perhaps provide some feedback. Just because if they have to interact with them on a regular basis, we want a comfort level there too, and,
Right.
and make them part of the process. But if we do some sort of preliminary screening at this level, I'd still be comfortable with them coming in and being part of that as well.
Okay.
So
How often do they interface? How often during a month would Rondi interface with Jeff, or?
For Rondi, it's probably 2 to 3 times a month, and it's usually not face to face. It's usually an email or a phone call. James, similarly, not a lot face to face, but way more frequent. I'd say several times a week.
Oh, okay, so
They're-
he's
they're
frequent.
interfa- Oh yeah, we're always sending agreements and contracts and those types of things back and forth. So that's why James would be the one I'd rely on most from the staff perspective.
and it would really just be for them to.
Sounds like James would be a good person to have on the committee even during
Yeah.
the interview
Yeah.
process, but that's up to you, Bob.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm not. It's not clear yet if we're going to be interviewing closed session or public session, but
Right.
Should be closed
If-
session, we're hiring an employee, I keep saying that because some of the questions you want to ask shouldn't be public.
Yep.
makes sense to me. So yeah, and I don't want when I say more the merrier. I don't want it to be the entire district show up.
No.
But I think I think our human resources lead should be part of that as well too, because there's MOUs that are being
Yep.
negotiated. There's employment matters that come up
Yep.
on a regular basis, and
Yeah.
so. And again, they're not obviously going to be one of the voting members at the end of the day, but they
Right.
might have some feedback that they want to provide that we can take into consideration.
Or ask a great question that the three
Yeah,
of
that
us
we had-
didn't think of,
yeah,
and-
exactly.
which may influence your decisions.
Cool.
Okay.
Well, good.
Anything else from your end?
I think that's it, thank you for doing this, it was a lot of work.
That's all right.
You put a lot of work into just this part.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's funny. You learn through experience that you better do a good job on this to hopefully get a good product in here. And this isn't. I didn't create the whole thing from scratch.
Everybody steals from the.
Yeah. I mean,
Bits and pieces.
well, people learn from experience and make them better. But it's spent quite a bit of time, and I think we got some good proposals.
We'll keep it. We'll do it again in 5 years.
There you go. Yeah.
It's not a once. That'll be the true test. I don't know if any of us will still be here in 5 years,
Yeah.
but if we are, and we get more people who apply, maybe that 30-year thing is what dissuaded people from doing it.
Well, it could be, and I think that would be an important thing. Whoever we select, even if it was to be Jeff, the contract's only for 5 years, and then it will be competitive.
We need to be transparent about that. But
Yeah.
but also we probably should talk and do we do a 5-year contract or do we do a 3-year contract with an optional 2
Extension,
years?
yeah.
So those are things that still to be discussed and considered. So, and then I don't know I'm not familiar with hiring legal firms, but is there any sort of precedent for the 1 year's probationary period? Because
Yeah.
what if they get on board and it doesn't work?
Yeah. I'm in an awkward position because the person I'd go to for legal advice is
I know.
he's thrown his hat in the ring. But
Yeah.
I will have to ask Jeff about can the interviews be done in a closed session, and he can obviously get
Yeah, I
you
don't
good,
think-
clear legal advice on that. But,
Well, on one hand, But on the other,
He'll give you a good, clean advice on that one, you can almost guarantee.
But about the other ones, I mean, maybe you can reach out to your peers, other GMs that might have gone through this before, and like again, I think you kind of get into, you don't want to scare anybody away when you start talking about, well, we want to have a 1-year probationary period, because
Yeah.
they're like, well, what do you mean? Are we getting married or not?
Right,
So
yeah. Because they're gonna want some type of a commitment to allocate their resources.
Yeah.
And, yeah,
so, but you never know. I mean,
yeah.
as long as there's some sort of language in the contract with them, it's funny because who helps write the contract with? I mean, if you know what I mean.
We may have to go out and get a separate outside counsel.
Yeah.
you should have outside counsel look at it.
There should be some sort of termination clause for both parties.
Yeah.
And language within that contract, one way or the other. So.
Right.
Part of the problem you get into, especially for you, the GM, is that you get the fickle fate of 5 board members that can change every 2 years.
Yep.
It's like.
So it keeps me awake at night. Don't you mind?
Yeah. You just want to keep the same ones because they're all wonderful.
Yeah, that's right.
Or most of them. Not me included. Yeah, I mean, and the attorneys know that as well.
Yeah.
And maybe they're looking at going, well, they got a new board people and they want to make some changes. We're not going to spin on wheels. I think that I hadn't thought of that, but as soon as you brought up it, that makes
Yeah.
perfect sense.
I think it's a really good time to do this, so it doesn't appear that it's mixed up in politics. It's not
Right.
right after an election change and people are wondering, oh, what's going on there?
Right.
That's not what's happening here at all.
It's real simple. It hasn't been done in 30 years, and I
Yeah.
just think we need to do our due diligence as a board to make sure that we're getting the best value for our
Right.
repairs for this expensive service.
Yeah.
And one thing I'll ask from both of you, if we decide to shortlist from the 5 down, I'd like to get some feedback, because I can guarantee there's going to be firms calling me saying, hey, why did
Oh, sure.
we get weeded out?
Yeah.
And I'd like to
Sure.
give them something concrete. If I say, hey, it's because you're located too far away, not much they can do unless they're going to open up a local office.
Right.
But,
Right.
well, I started to tell that story about Ewa, their experience. So they went to the people's shop to interview at their shop instead of at Ewa's offices, because in the past they had experience with selecting consultants where the consultant said, oh yeah, we have a local office, it's such and such. They went there, never had been there, never had a lease or anything, so they said, next time we're going to go to your shop. So,
And see
so all the
what you have.
firms knew. And I think they even asked, how long have you been here? Let's see, if you just moved in last night, I don't have a really strong fuzzy feeling. But,
Well, and the problem too is some of the apples and pears. If you have a small shop, like I do live, our current attorney has a small shop. I've been to the outside of it, I haven't been inside.
yeah,
He had a going away party for Dennis,
okay.
which I stopped by for 3 minutes.
Dennis Lamb?
Yeah,
Yeah.
3 minutes. Hi Dennis, bye Dennis, made my appearance, but I never went inside to see him. It's in an office, hacienda building type
Yeah.
setup. And, well, the front page is a picture of it.
Yeah, it's a nice facility there.
Yeah.
And it's in RB, it's a nice facility, but it's not big or grandiose by any.
No.
If you're at BB&K, I'm sure it's gonna be all glass for the first 12 stories.
All marble and.
Yeah, I mean, but,
Yeah,
and the price is gonna reflect that, but then again, which one gives you the best service?
yeah,
I don't know the answer to that.
yeah. Well, the good thing, we're not usually here to try to impress anybody by our wealth of our attorneys' firms. So it's
Right.
like, whereas some private companies do, they want to wine you and dine you, and that's just.
We're just impressing them by our showers, that's all. We want them to see our showers.
Yes. All right. Anything else I can do before we?
No, thank you very much, thank you for
You're
filling
welcome.
this in.
Yeah.
Really
So-
do appreciate it.
Happy reading.
Yes,
Yeah. It's gonna be riveting.
Yeah. Well, I think as you go through them, you'll start to say, hey, here's some questions I need. And if you say, hey, I asked the same question in all 5 of these, then that's a
Yeah.
really good question. But some may be very specific to, hey, I noticed your office says LA. Are you really working out of LA, or do you have a local office?
Yeah, and a lot of each of these is just boilerplate stuff.
It
I mean,
is.
so.
Yeah,
if for the $2 million we're charging you, sir, we'll open a local office.
that's right.
Thank you. Right
Yeah.
next door here,
I don't wanna-
Palomar Station.
I don't want to fund your local office.
Palomar Station.
No, but maybe they want to lease some office space from us because we have plenty of office space.
Oh, we got extra office space.
Yeah.
You want a space in our building?
Maybe for discounted legal
Swap out.
fees, we could.
You can provide office
Office
space,
space.
temporary office space.
Actually, you know what?
Yeah.
You might be onto something.
You might be.
Then there's no commute time at all.
Then you're crossing the line between employees and contractors.
Yeah, exactly.
Very careful. Anytime you start providing office space.
I think the bowling alley is a better idea. You know the bowling alley, you close the meeting yet?
Okay, move to adjourn. Second?
Second.
Aye. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So,